Welcome to the Dynamics 365 Practice Show. In this episode, I interview Nicholas Hayduk and get the lowdown on Dynamics portals and the latest features in this new release. Nicholas is a licensed professional engineer and owner of Engineered Code, a firm that specializes in CRM portals implementations for Microsoft Dynamics 365. Having worked with the product since its infancy, Engineered Code engage with customers and partners to ensure the success of their CRM portal implementations. To review the show notes for this episode, please go to nz365guide.com/54. I'd like to thank the generous contribution from our sponsor, D365 UG. D365 UG is the world's most influential user group community of Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM users and partners. Across the globe, members share a common goal of maximizing and advancing the performance of Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM so that individuals and companies can improve operations, overcome obstacles, and exceed goals. Hey, but now, let's get on with the show. Hey Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Well, it's good to have you on. I met you back a bit at a conference recently and understood that you're neck deep in the portal space. Can you tell us a bit about how you got into specifically the area of portals out of, what's available in the Dynamics ecosystem?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually started my career with Adxstudio. So if you are familiar with that name, they're the ones that actually built the portals that Microsoft acquired a few years back. So I was going to university here in Canada. I had the opportunity to move back to my home province, and it just happened to be at this firm that happened to be called Adxstudio. I knew nothing really about them at the time other than the fact that my cousin happened to work there. In fact, I had two cousins that worked there, and I thought, hey, that would be fun working with my cousins. So I packed up all my things, moved to Regina here, and it happened to be Adxstudio, and that's how I got started with portals.
Wow. So Regina, and what does Regina mean?
So Regina, I think, is Latin for queen or something like that, and it's actually named after Queen Victoria.
Ah, okay. And is it the province? Do you call it a province or a state?
The province, yes. So we're in Regina, Saskatchewan. I believe Saskatchewan's like a Cree name for swift flowing river or something, it has to do with a river. We have the Saskatchewan River that goes through the whole province. And so that's what the province is named after.
Gotcha. And so, I know Shan MacArthur well. In fact, this past weekend, I was discussing with some of their MVPs that the only houses I've been to in the United States are 3 different houses, all of Shan MacArthur's. So I take it he came from the same area as where you're based then at the moment. Is that right?
Yep. So I worked with Shan for a couple of years when I was at Adxstudio, and so we're both from Regina here. And yeah, I haven't been to his house in the States, but I've heard rave reviews.
He certainly knows how to, and his wife know how to cook an amazing meal in their barbecues, and the green egg and things like that. It's just making me hungry thinking about the lovely cuts of meat he brings out. It's absolutely fantastic.
I think he knows his wine too.
He does. He likes to drop. He likes to drop, and he's got some amazing hobbies. But anyhow, this is not the Shan show. This is about you, Nick. So tell us a bit about what are you doing now and the company you're involved in, and let's get back to this focus you've taken in Dynamics portals.
Yeah, so after a couple of years at Adxstudio, an opportunity presented itself to join a startup. So that was kind of interest to me. So I did that. But at the same time, the whole Dynamics 365 portals, all that whole area just kept kind of dragging me back in. I'd be doing kind of consulting work on the side and, with the various different companies. And it just kind of grew and grew and grew until the startup that I was working with actually turned into the first client of the company that I founded. So I founded Engineered Code Consulting Inc. in 2014 with a strong focus on helping partners all over the world with portals implementations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you say all over the world. So where's the furthest afield you've assisted on portals?
We've got clients in all over Europe, Germany, Sweden, the UK. We've worked with partners in Australia, New Zealand. I'm trying to think. I don't know if any in Asia yet, but definitely the Australia area.
Excellent. So it's interesting because, a lot of people ask me for advice, particularly career advice, across the Dynamics community. And one of the things I always recommend is the need to niche down and, really own a piece of, this suite of products that we can deal with. And you've really done that in owning kind of like the segment of portals. Is that pretty much the only area you work within? Naturally, you'd be touching other parts of Dynamics, but is your focus purely on creating customer-facing portals?
Pretty much, yeah. In our local markets here in Saskatchewan, there's not a ton of Dynamics partners. So we'll kind of do full implementations of Dynamics for people here in our local market. But outside of that, yeah, our focus is portals. I totally agree with you. There's 5 years ago, you could probably claim, I know most of Dynamics or Dynamics CRM. Now, if you say that, I don't believe you. And certainly the case with me, we do a lot of portals work, so I feel like we know that space pretty well. But don't ask me about project service or field service. We know a little bit because there's portals based on those. But if you say, hey, I'm going to do a full field service implementation, we're not the firm for you.
Yeah, because, when the product was, I'm talking about the Field 1 product, was purchased by Microsoft, one of the whole stories around it was actually using Adxstudio right as the portal component of that. Was it Field 1 back in the day?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so you're focusing just on portals. Tell us a bit about, you don't have to mention the name of the companies, etc., but kind of what's the best or most ambitious portal that you feel you've developed to date or been involved in?
So we like doing portals. Obviously, there's the ones that come out of the box, and those are fun. But what we worked with a local kind of government organization here in Saskatchewan. I don't know if the rules are the same kind of across the world, but at least in Canada, if you're a lobbyist in the province of Saskatchewan, so if you're lobbying the government to change legislation, you have to register on a website. And so that has to be approved by this kind of arm's length government agency, and that all gets posted online so that the public can search through that. So we built that on Dynamics, and we used portals to do that. So the lobbyists go on to this 15-page complex form that they have to fill out. It then goes back to that government agency that has to say, yes, you're following the rules, you're approved to lobby, and then that gets posted onto this publicly searchable portal that anyone can just log into, and they can see who's lobbying whom about what.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. It was, I had a delayed flight coming out of Seattle a month or so ago, and it was delayed beyond an EU limit. There's an EU limit on how much an airline can delay you, and you get credited. And so I got sent a link, and I clicked on the button with my airline, and up popped a portal, for me to go through my claim process, and I could tell straight away it was an Adxstudio portal sitting there back-ended, by Dynamics. So, and this brings up an interesting point. There seems to be kind of a look and feel that hasn't gone away since the acquisition has kind of happened. So, for example, if I log into my user profile, it's pretty much the original template that was, still in place back in 2015. Is Microsoft, in your opinion, really moving the platform forward? I know there's going to be some changes that you'd make under the cover with, bringing it in-house, but I've got this kind of underlying feeling that, nothing's really happened much in the last couple of years. What are your thoughts?
I'm not going to sit here and disagree with you too much on that. In fact, after the acquisition, the first release that came out, so the last version of kind of the actual Adxstudio product was version 7. When version 8 came out, there were some new things in it, but most people kind of considered it almost a step back. There were a couple of major features that didn't make it from version 7 to version 8.
So they just got cut? They just got cut out?
Yeah, so there were some technological reasons why they couldn't, they didn't want to transition. I don't know if it was Microsoft maybe didn't want to support some of these things. So for example, one of the big ones was the e-commerce capabilities. And the other one, which thankfully that gap has been filled now, but the other one that was missing was the Sharepoint integration. So Sharepoint existed in version 7, didn't exist in version 8.
Yeah, it's back in there now, right, though?
It's back in there. It was just released in the last few weeks here. So that was one of the things as part of the October release was the added Sharepoint integration. But when that first version 8 came out, there were some missing features. And what we also did is we lost the ability to include our own server-side code directly in the product. It used to be Adxstudio would say, here you go, here's here's at least kind of half of the source code that you can go in there and start changing kind of however you want. And now that the version 8, the Microsoft offering is completely software as a service. So it's completely hosted by Microsoft. We don't have access to that source code anymore. We lost some of that, customizability. Now, in terms of the actual kind of look and feel, there's a few pages where we don't have a ton of control. And you pointed one of those out, which is the profile page. And the portal's functionality is all built on this platform called Bootstrap, which is a Twitter kind of CSS framework. That being said, it's certainly possible to make that not feel like a portal. And I know exactly what you mean, because in most cases, they're taking the out-of-the-box portals, they're adding a logo, they're maybe changing some colors, but in the end, you take one look at it and you're like, this is a portal. It's possible to change all of that. That being said, in a lot of cases, maybe that investment isn't worthwhile. If you're looking at just kind of, if you need that functionality, the fact that to make that huge investment to get away from the look and feel just may not be worthwhile for a lot of portals.
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting, right? Because even like if you right-click and take a look at the behind the scenes, pretty quickly you see that there's, you can see all the references to Adxstudio still exist. And, 2015, we're just about into 2019 now. Do you think that at some point Microsoft will perhaps do a serious rewrite of the code and here's the other one, is really make it accessible from the Power Platform, not just via, a first-party app like Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement for Sales or something like that?
Yes. So we were very excited to find out here in the last month or two that Microsoft did announce that portals will no longer require one of the first-party apps, and you'll be able to buy it just as part of just a regular CDS environment. So that's going to be a huge step forward. There's actually technical reasons why that's not possible right now. There's some dependencies on some entities, like, for example, the case entity. So even the most basic solutions that you require for the portals have some dependencies, so they have to kind of go in there and take some of those out. So they're working towards that, and they have said that, yes, it will be available via CDS without having to buy sales or customer service or one of those things.
Wow, excellent. I just think, that's a smart move forward, because these days, pretty much, if you're going to create any company or have any company, there's going to be some type of need to have some type of presence that your customers can engage, outside your firewall, so to speak, directly in with data inside your organization. So there's kind of that need, isn't there? If the Power Platform's the future of us building any type of line of business application, I would see that need for that type of access.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, we really think that almost every CRM implementation should have a portal associated with it, whether it's for partners or customers or even employees. There's so many great use cases. And the fact that you do get one, if you have 10 kind of fully licensed users, you do get one of the portals at no cost. I used the word free the other day, and Nick Dolman yelled at me on LinkedIn that he doesn't consider it free, he considers it included. Tomato.
Yeah.
But the thing to be aware of in that case is that you don't get a free one per CRM org that you have. So if you have, if you're following kind of proper development procedures and you have production and you have development and you have UAT and all those different environments, you still only get one portal. So even though, yes, they say there's one that's included, typically you're paying for at least one or two more for your dev and your test environments.
Right. So if you want to run a full application lifecycle management type process across that, you're going to need to go out and buy those other ones. Is that right? Exactly. Okay. So if I gave you a crystal ball, where do you see us in the next 2 to 3 years now that the portal has moved over to, under Charles Lamanna's team, and my understanding is going to get some serious, prime time investment. Where do you think it's going to go?
So the big thing that I know that they're working on right now is improving the content authoring experience. That was one of the things that was announced as part of the October release, and something's in preview now. It's fairly basic. It's not a replacement from what's there right now. But I know that there were a number of sessions at the fall conferences, as well as some more at Extreme, where they're diving into improving that content authoring experience. I think one of the things that may be a struggle with the platform is there's certainly a steep learning curve with it. So they're trying to make it really simple for people to spin up a portal and use some of those out-of-the-box capabilities. It should almost be like, click, 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 and now you've got your help desk. Like that should be how easy it could be. So I think that they're kind of moving towards that and making it as easy to set up as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, you take WordPress, right? Pretty much the gold standard in the market for content management systems. I think they've got more sites hosted on them than any other platform at any level of scale. And, they're working to this whole new project, what's they call Project Gutenberg at the moment, which is, an even more simplified content layout experience within the application. You think Microsoft's going to get there, or are they going to create a content experience that, most of us that have done any kind of web work would have been doing 5 years ago? Or will they jump that gap that's currently there and really update, do you think, to the level of what is kind of the industry standard of today?
Yeah, so one of the things, and I got into an exchange with someone at one of the conferences in Phoenix there, is people have this misconception that Portals is a content management system, where technically it is, and that's kind of where it got its start. So Adxstudio, way back in the day, before they got into Dynamics, they built a content management system directly on .NET and SQL Server. So that's their history. Then they saw that opportunity to say, hey, maybe we can build this on the Dynamics platform, and they went that way. But it really started off as, hey, here's a content management system for Dynamics. Very quickly, though, they realized that that's not necessarily where the need is. So while there is basic content management functionality, which is really required to have a Portals framework, it's not it doesn't compare well against WordPress or Drupal or Sitecore, or any of those things that are meant to be actual content management systems. So one of the things I said to Microsoft when they were asking for our feedback is I said, I don't want to see, yes, we need to improve the authoring experience. Yes, we need to modernize it, but let's not spend, too much time. Let's not, do too much work there, because in the end, if your goal is to replace the WordPresses and the Drupals of the world, I don't think that's going to be successful. And that's not where the need is. We need something that allows the people to interact with the Dynamics data, not to replace their corporate website.
Right. Okay. So so you're saying, it should be a subdomain type environment where it's allowing specific access, like, let's say, the vendor portal or, your reseller portal, which is like, that's not your main website, which is kind of like a marketing platform, but this is like a subdomain site that does a specific business function.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Would it be great if they were also the CMS that you could run your website on? And we used to build, with version 7 of Adxstudio, we used to build full kind of corporate websites all the time. Now that we've lost some of the ability to extend that, or, it's a little bit more difficult. And Microsoft is really focusing on making this a portal framework and not a complete content management system. I just think that they're far behind in that. And if they're going to spend the next 5 years trying to get there, I'm concerned that we're going to lose they're not going to make the investments that need to happen on the portal side, because that's really what we need.
Interesting. So, there's products out in the market like Alexa CRM. They have a product there called Dynamic CRM Integration, and that allows you to kind of create the equivalent of a portal experience, but in an industry standard, content management system like WordPress. Why wouldn't I just use that over, in your mind, why wouldn't I just use that over using Dynamics Portal? Because when I say Dynamics Portal, I'm just thinking there's a whole lot of aging code in a platform that, if you're just using it for those portal components, it's kind of like not an easy upsell as opposed to using like a third-party solution like this. And what I mean is that we just talked about the ALM process. I need to go and buy all those additional licenses, etc., to run my dev test environments on top of prod. I need a minimum of 10 users to run prod. It starts to add up from a cost perspective to use this tool set that's kind of, I feel like it's not like industry standard. Like, I'm a big fanboy of Microsoft and Dynamics and have been for years, but kind of what's your thoughts in that, and what do you think Microsoft need to do to kind of get that credibility of being the tool that really does that portal component?
I think that's what the acquisition helped do for the Adxstudio product. I mean, there's a couple other competitors, as you mentioned, the Alexa CRM. There's the Portals connector, which is a similar tool that's built on top of Drupal, I believe. So again, I believe there's other solutions if you want your corporate website and you just need a form or two, then I think those other tools are great. But if you want to build out these more kind of complex applications, which the entity forms and entity lists capabilities of the portals gives you, then I think that's where the power of that particular product it really shines.
Interesting, because I know that Alexa CRM product provides all that. It provides right down to the entity, if I can provide all that data out through that portal. And so, okay, so what excites you then about our path forward, that you're obviously going to continue to invest in this space, and there's a lot of customers that are naturally buying it, and you mentioned government as a key use case. What other non-government use cases do you see out there for portals, as in Dynamics portals specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, the big ones are just the help desk and the partner portal. Those are the ones that we see being used over and over and over again. And again, I think Microsoft has to get it to the point where it's more of a turnkey solution. Right now, even though you might hear it sold as you turn it on and away you go, we find that those types of implementations are rarely successful. So we think, again, every CRM should at least have turn on the portal, have it brand it, and turn on the help desk. Because I mean, very few companies don't need a help desk, right? Or the partner side. If you have partners, then they're all wanting a portal these days. It's expected. So I really think around it's all about self-service. The less we can have someone on the phone, and the more we can have them push them towards our portal, the better. So that's where I really see, if we can get the help desk situation more turnkey and make that easy to set up, and maybe not have to involve more dedicated technical resources, I really think that's where the opportunity is for the Microsoft product.
Okay, so what would you see as a kind of industry standard in that help desk area at the moment outside of Microsoft that it kind of needs to kind of get on par with?
I mean, with Dynamics, you'd be looking at some of the competitors, so whether it's the Alexa or the Portal connector.
Oh, no, I'm not meaning those type products. I'm meaning kind of like outside of the Microsoft ecosystem entirely, like products. So for example, Microsoft bought Parature a few years ago, right? Which was a real phenomenal help desk knowledge base type system. They kind of got the knowledge base piece sorted out, and it's a beautiful piece of tech now sitting in the customer services part of Dynamics. But like the portal piece is still, it's like it didn't come along for that journey that we saw from so much of the other IP that was sitting in Parature. What do you think would get it to get up to that kind of par where it's, you wouldn't put Zendesk in, you'd just put this in because it's the logical choice?
Yeah, and again, to me, it's all about making it turnkey, because I think that right now there's probably too much of an investment has to be made just to turn it on and give you what you would have already expected would be the basic functionality. A great example would be, there's a number of workflows in the system that just have a whole bunch of default text in them that you would never want a customer to see. Well, when you turn one of these on, you have to go through and customize that. Wouldn't it be great if there was more of a wizard style or some way of setting that up so a regular administrator with no expertise in Portal could go through this 10, 20 step process, whatever it would need to be, and say, oh, this is what I want the text to be when someone registers for my portal. Now you just need to know where those things are. It's not even really documented. The way that we figure those things out is we spin up trials and we just go through every single thing that we can find so that we know what are the things that we need to change. So I really think that that's the key.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's another thing that I've just been asked recently again, is that where can I get some really good portals training? And, I point them to Nick's way, and Nick is working hard out and doing, if you like, some events type thing. But, people from all over the world, need access to some really good training content. Do you see, where would you point people to really kind of get upskilled, to know, if you like, just like you said, to know what fields to go and edit and clean up and things like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's, I think, an underserviced area. The best training that I typically point people towards is typically training associated with any of the larger conferences. So I know coming up at Extreme, there's I think it's just a 1 or 2 day Portal training session. Nick Dolman is doing his Portals boot camps. So those are really the best ways. If you don't want to travel, then obviously, I'm sure if you reached out to Nick Dolman, or, again, we do that sort of training as well, to say, hey, we want to do a 1 or 2 day, whether in person or online, training from someone with the experience. But unfortunately, there isn't, there's not a ton of people out there that have that expertise. So it is a little difficult to come by. There's not really any online documentation or, hey, here's the steps to follow to learn portals. The Microsoft documentation really isn't organized that way. It's more of reference as opposed to kind of a getting started guide. So, we're doing our best to spread the word. I was just in Calgary last week for one of the Collaborate Canada events. And what I tried to do was I tried to cram the typical 2-day portals training session into an hour. I was moderately successful at it. The last couple minutes were somewhat of a blur, but yeah, again, it's those portal training sessions that are offered around the conferences are what I would recommend if you can, if at all possible, go participate in one of those, because they're exactly what you need.
Right. So you talked about not having access to the back end anymore. Does that mean it's zero code now to deploy portals, or is there still some areas that you can code, or is it totally off bounds?
So it's not zero code. It would be just a different type of code.
You're talking about front end, JavaScript, that type of thing?
Yeah, so there's JavaScript, but there's also a language called Liquid.
Yep.
Liquid is a server-side. It was meant as a templating language. It actually came from a company here in Canada called Shopify, if you're familiar with that platform, a very large e-commerce technology. So they built Liquid, and the great thing about Liquid is you can do almost anything as long as it's about displaying data. The problem with the Liquid technology, it has no create or update or delete capabilities. So you can make things that look great, you just can't interact with the data via Liquid. And it's the same thing with the JavaScript, is that you can tweak almost anything you want with JavaScript, but what we're still missing are the create and the update and the delete capabilities, which right now out of the box you can only do via entity forms. Thankfully, Microsoft has said that a JavaScript CRUD SDK is coming, so that will really make our life a lot easier. Right now, what we do is we use a technique called companion apps, where we actually host code up on a different server and then use JavaScript to interact with that other web service. So that's kind of the technique that we're using these days, because there's a lot of times you get into these implementations and you just can't do all the things you need to do with the out-of-the-box capabilities. So we have to find ways to get around what are originally perceived as limitations.
Right, so are you using iframes to do that, or something more sophisticated?
No, yeah. So we would just have actual JavaScript calls directly to those other web services, and then once you can post data, so you can edit data, you can pull back data. So you don't necessarily have to use iframes. It can appear right on the page, but you're just making calls to web services that are on a different domain than your portal.
So the October 2018 release that came out, the Sharepoint integration, that was a big deal. What else?
The other kind of big deal would probably be the Power BI integration.
Okay.
So it's now possible to embed a Power BI visual on a portal. There's essentially a single line of Liquid code that you can put on the page, and as long as you have all the permission set up right on the Power BI side, and you've got everything set up correctly, your visuals will show up on your portal. That is within an iframe.
Right. So it is using an iframe to do that. Interesting. So what do you see as the major use cases for having, the integration between SharePoint and portals now?
I mean, again, typically the default scenario is the help desk. Again, we all know how much storage in CRM online is. It's not cheap, so trying to get as many of those documents off of that and directly into a much cheaper platform like SharePoint is key. I know that we're working with a company right now where they have all their documents already in SharePoint, so it's kind of transitioning away from an older system that did use SharePoint to portals, and again, all their documents were already in SharePoint. So it's great to be able to just leverage that in a couple clicks, and you're able to show the documents directly from SharePoint and just avoid the whole kind of storage costs associated with hosting a bunch of those documents within Dynamics itself.
So to get access to that, does the authenticated person in the portal need to be like an Azure Active Directory authenticated individual?
They do not.
They don't?
No. And that, I believe, is one of the reasons why the SharePoint integration wasn't available immediately. The old technique was, you'd set up a service user in SharePoint, and you'd have to give it a username and password, and it would be kind of authenticating behind the scenes with SharePoint. And I don't know if Microsoft was overly comfortable with that solution. So what they were waiting on was the server-to-server integration. And I believe that's what finally became available with SharePoint, and then now they're able to do that. So the person who logs in, now obviously there are still kind of licensing implications to be aware of. If they're internal users, then they most likely still need a license from SharePoint, but there's no kind of technical limitation on that. And you can certainly have external people authenticating and not have them be with Azure Active Directory at all.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So kind of if someone's wanting to set up a portal on their Dynamics instance, they got 10 users, kind of what's the woe to go, start to finish and up and running? I can actually provision a portal. What's the type of time frame to get that up and running?
So it actually only takes a few clicks to get the process kicked off. And then from there, they say, it can be anywhere from 15 minutes to a few hours. So essentially just within your Office or Dynamics 365 admin area, under the Applications tab, there's a button that says, hey, here's my portal. And you click it and you'll be asked to fill in a few fields. What kind of portal do you want? What do you want to call it? And you click go. And then typically, like I said, anywhere between 15 minutes and 2 hours, the portal has been provisioned in your environment. They're adding all the solutions to your CRM. They're importing all the data that's required to make the portal go. And then you're ready to go. But like I said, there's still work to be done to take what is essentially a lot of demo content and turn it into the real deal.
Right. So you're saying when you deploy an instance, you get it filled chock full of stuff that you've got to remove to kind of start with? Like you're talking demo content?
Yeah, there's some demo content. There'll be some, forums and stuff in there for... Again, you can use those if you want kind of a generic forum. It's a great place to start, but there'll be a number of web pages on there with content that will just say, it's demo content, or it may not fit your branding or the messaging that you want. So even after you turn it on, there's still typically, a number of places you have to go and, remove pages or change the content on.
Right. Is there any way I can script all that? As in I just love to write a script that would go through and go, let's say it was set up to remove all, in quote, stuff that I don't need with the base or clean environment. If I was building all the time, is there any kind of scripting workflows, anything like that you could run across it?
Absolutely. I mean, all of the great thing about portals and the worst thing about portals is that all the data is really just data in the CRM. Keeping in mind that Adxstudio built this as a third-party add-on, so they didn't have any special, access or keys that let them do anything that you couldn't do via the API. So you could certainly write, whether it's PowerShell scripts or any sort of scripts using the Dynamics APIs, and that all could be stripped out of there for sure.
Mm-hmm. So there's a range of portals that Microsoft currently provision. Do you want to step us through quickly what they are at a high level and what's the differences between them?
Sure. So kind of at a base level, there's what they call the custom portal. You can kind of think of that as the CDS of portals, in that they give you kind of all this base functionality, but none of the, quote unquote, first party apps on top of those. So that's one of the 5. The next 2 are very, very similar. So there's the customer self-service portal and the employee self-service portal. Both of those have forums on them. They have the knowledge base functionality as well as the help desk functionality. The thing with the employee self-service portal is that it's kind of by default set up to use Azure Active Directory as the authentication mechanism, which you'd kind of expect in these environments that even your employees who are logging in would most likely have Azure Active Directory, so you can log in directly with that as opposed to other credentials, whether it's Twitter and Facebook to log into your portal. So those are the next 2. There is a community portal, which has essentially those same features plus a couple other ones like blogs and ideas. And then finally, there's the most complicated of all of them, and that's the partner portal. So the partner portal still has forums and knowledge base and help desk, but also has the ability to manage accounts and contacts and opportunities, as well as has add-ons for both project service and field service to add some of those capabilities that you'd see in Dynamics onto the portal as well.
Yeah, excellent. What's the kind of biggest myth you've come across in relationship to Dynamics portals?
The biggest myth, I mentioned this one earlier, was the fact that people think it's a content management system, an enterprise content management system that they should build their websites on top of. And we just run into too many people who end up quite sad at the end when they realize, what they've gotten, where there's some basic functionality in there, but they start comparing it with millions of plugins with that WordPress has. How do I add the calendar plugin? Well, there's no calendar plugin. So that would be the biggest thing that we see.
What's the biggest challenge you've come across with implementing portals, like the one that's kind of kept you awake on a project to try and sort out?
Yeah, so we deal with we work with a lot of partners, and we unfortunately deal with a lot of implementations that have gone wrong. And it's usually because the skill set that you need for Dynamics is quite a bit different than just kind of a regular, what you'd consider a CRM developer to be. You need to know Liquid, you need to know JavaScript, but not just regular JavaScript. It's the front-end JavaScript, which is kind of its own separate beast. The JavaScript that you'd write in Dynamics is a lot more about the logic and controlling things. When you have to write that logic so that it's cross-browser and so that it shows nice to an end user, that's a different thing as well. So we just deal with a lot of times where people don't have the proper training and the proper background to be able to do and to be able to run one of these projects successfully. So the biggest challenge we typically find is lack of training and just people getting in there and thinking, hey, I can just turn this on and it will be done. And unfortunately, again, we deal with a lot of implementations where that wasn't the customer just had some different expectations. So we were able to come in there and hopefully get them on their way.
Mm-hmm. You've never come across a portal issue you haven't been able to solve?
I would say, there's certainly some areas where we don't have a lot of flexibility. You mentioned one earlier where it would be the profile page or the authentication experience. So I don't know if I've ever came across a solution that you couldn't solve, because there's always a way with infinite time and money that you can solve it. There's certainly been some cases around, say, the search functionality where we were helping a customer with a fairly complex search requirements where, again, we were able to get it not necessarily how they wanted to begin with, but a way that eventually they're like, yes, this will work for us, but it's not always the way that they initially dreamed it up.
Yeah. I know I asked you this before, but where do you see we'll be in, let's say, 18 months' time with the product? In the conversations you've had with people, in reading the roadmap, etc. You happy? What are your thoughts?
The indications that I've received about the move to CDS, the JavaScript APIs that will let us actually do creates and updates and deletes. If we can get that, that's going to be a game changer, because the whole idea of the companion app that we talked about earlier, while it's a great technique, if we didn't have to use that, that's going to make things that much quicker. So I'm really excited about the CDS and the JavaScript API. And then I'm curious to see, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with this kind of their reimagining of the content authoring experience. They've got some of it in preview. They've still got a lot of work to do to finish it off, but I'm really curious to see where that's going to go over the next, 18 months.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Anything else you'd like to add before we get into some quick fire questions?
Just as I mentioned before, like people should be leveraging this technology. We think every CRM deserves a portal. So, they say it's free, as we talked about. If you're doing it properly, it's not no cost. But we really think it's a hard stretch to believe that you're doing a CRM that couldn't really benefit from a portal.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so let's look at some quick fire questions. What books, blogs, podcasts, etc. do you kind of use to keep yourself up to date and that you recommend to others?
Yeah, so in terms of podcasts, I listen to a lot of the different ones on the CRM audio network. Especially want to plug the Refresh the Cache, which is a portal-specific one that just came out in the last couple months here. I was on the last episode, so that's a great one if you're interested in staying up to date on portals. That's hosted by Nick Dolman and Colin Vermander, both Dynamics MVPs. And then the other one I listen to would be the CRM MVP podcast with Gus Gonzalez.
Right, excellent. And what about apps? If I was to look at your mobile phone as to which one's chewing the most battery on your phone, what apps would be in there?
In terms of chewing the most battery, probably Netflix. I'm not actually that much of I don't use my phone that much. It took me a while to even get to a smartphone and data and all that sort of stuff. So Netflix is probably what would be the most use on my phone. But the app that really, I think, the coolest app is, and I don't know if this is the case all over the world, but at least here in Canada, we're able to deposit checks by taking pictures. And that, to me, has changed my life. I don't even have to go to a bank anymore.
I find that's funny? Because in the Southern Hemisphere, we haven't had checks for 15 years. We just haven't had them at all. They're a thing of the past.
Yeah, no, here there's still, most business is done via check. So, yeah, the fact that the check arrives in the mail, I take a picture, away it goes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow, incredible. Yeah, I reckon my last checkbook would have been over 15 years ago.
So what do you guys use?
Everything's on card. And now it's not even card, it's phone, watch, Apple Pay, all those type of things. It's if you're paying another company, it'll just be you just do a bank transfer. The transfers now are in real time, meaning within an hour of me transferring from bank A to bank B, it'll be in their account and, in the Southern Hemisphere. It's that quick now. So, the concept of the checks in the mail, etc., doesn't fly anymore because it's just, nobody pays by check.
Yeah, certainly in our experience here in Canada, a lot of the business-to-business stuff, certainly the consumer stuff, I haven't written a check, at a grocery store or anything like that. I've never done that in my entire life. But we find still a lot of the business, you send a business an invoice and they're sending you a check.
Wow, incredible. Do you have any kind of daily rituals that set you up on the right path for the day?
Really, the only thing that's consistent about my, when I get up in the morning, is I got two little girls that it's my responsibility to get them to childcare in the morning. So trying to wrangle them, especially on days when it's minus 40 outside, and get them all dressed up. Once I've done that, it's all easy after that. There's no challenge that's more than, trying to get those kids all wrangled and off to daycare. So.
Awesome. What's the best purchase you've made under $100?
Oh, that's a good question. I was thinking about that, and the only thing that popped to mind, and I don't know if it was around that $100 mark, but I don't know if you've ever heard of sleep phones. I have to listen to music or TV or something as I'm falling asleep. My wife does not. She wants it dark and quiet. So these sleep phones are basically, they're like a headband with speakers in them. So and they work over Bluetooth. So they're really comfortable headphones that you can wear while you're sleeping, and I love them.
Okay, so you can roll over. They won't fall out.
You can roll over,
like
yep.
And they're called sleep phones, so Google that, you would find that, no worries.
Yes, sleep phones.
So just another one out of left field here. Across your career, you've obviously been to a few events, conferences, that type of thing. Kind of which one kind of gives you the best bang for buck that you were like, if I was only one conference I could go to in 2019, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, there's two major ones. There would be the Summit and Extreme, and I love both of those conferences for very different reasons. The thing I love about Extreme, it's very technical, but at least before the acquisition with Dynamic Communities, it was so focused on CRM. Whereas you go to Summit and you felt, hey, you're gonna run into these people who are at the conference. There's a 1 in 5 chance that they're actually CRM, and you have something to talk to them about, right? Whereas Extreme, it was so laser focused. Everyone's there for CRM. They had some kind of social events in the evening. They'd rent out a whole bar, and the whole conference can basically show up to a bar. So, man, I really loved Extreme last year. It was a lot of fun.
So where was it last year?
It was in Long Beach.
And I know it's coming up again. I'm looking forward to it in Europe, in Amsterdam this coming year. So that should be interesting.
And it's coming up here in North America, in Austin, at the beginning of December.
Yeah, correct. This podcast wouldn't have gone out by the time that event's alive. So it'll come out after that. Who do you recommend as a guest for the podcast in the future? That's kind of in the kind of space of supporting the Dynamics practice or people running Dynamics type businesses. Any recommendations?
So while he works for a client, the one thing that kind of popped in my mind is a gentleman by the name of Peter Gulka. He did a great session at Summit. Like he's kind of relatively new to the space. He did a session about his first year as a Dynamics 365 admin, but not technical. It wasn't like, here are the skills you need to learn. It was all about, learning and you should always be pushing yourself to go outside of your comfort zone and all that sort of stuff. So I think those were lessons that, all of us can learn from. So I'd recommend, I think that his talk there deserves a wider audience. So I think that would be great to have on your podcast.
Wicked. We'll get in touch with them. Nicholas, it's been awesome to have you on the show. Before you go, if people want to find you online, kind of what's your URL, what's your Twitter handle, that type of thing that they can find you?
Sure. So everything's engineered code. So engineeredcode.com, on Twitter, engineered_code. Someone apparently has engineered code without the underscore that never uses it. Super frustrating. And then you can get me on LinkedIn. Again, find me at Nicholas Hayduk. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Okay, so you've been listening to the Dynamics 365 Practice Show. Please consider subscribing to the feed on any great podcast player. Your host was Business Applications MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. Please check out my YouTube channel by searching for NZ365 Guy on YouTube. For show notes or to discuss anything covered in the show, please go to nz365guy.com/54. Ciao for now.